The morning of my graduation from Stanford's computer science program should have been the proudest day of my life. Instead, I was sitting in my dorm room staring at a text from my father. "Don't expect us to attend. You've made your choice." My choice. As if choosing to study computer science instead of following in his footsteps as a corporate lawyer was some kind of betrayal. As if building something meaningful with technology was somehow beneath the Morrison family name. I had worked 4 years for this moment. 4 years of coding until 3 a.m., surviving on coffee and determination, building apps that actually help people while my classmates partied. 4 years of my parents telling me I was wasting my potential and playing with toys, while my sister Emma pursued her MBA at Wharton, their golden child who could do no wrong. But they came anyway. Not for me but for appearances. The Morrison family couldn't have people asking why they missed their daughter's graduation from one of the most prestigious tech programs in the world. Image was everything to my parents, and an absent family at graduation would raise questions they didn't want to answer. I spotted them in the audience as I lined up with my fellow graduates. Dad in his perfectly tailored navy suit, Mom in her designer dress and pearls, both of them looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. Emma sat between them, resplendent in her own cap and gown. She was graduating from her MBA program the same day, which explained their reluctant presence. "Sarah Morrison," I heard my mom say to the woman next to her, pointing at Emma. "Summa cum laude MBA from Wharton. We're so proud." The woman smiled politely. "And your other daughter?" Mom's smile tightened. "Oh, she studies computers." Computers. Like I was some kind of hobbyist tinkering in a garage instead of someone who had spent 4 years mastering algorithms, artificial intelligence and software architecture. Like the 3 patents I already held meant nothing. Like the startup I'd been quietly building meant nothing. As we walked across the stage, I watched Emma receive her diploma to enthusiastic applause from our parents. When my turn came, I heard polite clapping, the kind you give a stranger. I caught my father's eye as I accepted my diploma. He was checking his watch. After the ceremony, families gathered on the lawn for photos and celebration. I watched Emma pose with our parents, their smiles genuine and proud. I stood apart, watching my own family celebrate my sister's achievement while treating my graduation like an obligation they'd fulfilled. "Sarah," Emma called out, finally noticing me. "Come take pictures with us." I walked over and Dad immediately put his arm around Emma while Mom fussed with her cap. I stood slightly apart, and I could see in the photos later that I looked like a distant relative who'd been reluctantly included. "So," Dad said after the photographer finished, his voice carrying that familiar edge of disappointment. "What's next for you? Still planning to play with computers?" "I'm starting my job at Google next month," I said quietly. Mom raised an eyebrow. "Google? That search engine company? I thought you'd eventually come to your senses and apply to law school." "Actually," I said, my voice steady despite the hurt burning in my chest, "I've been accepted to Harvard Law's JD/MBA program. Full scholarship. I could start next fall if I wanted." Dad's expression shifted slightly. "Really? You never mentioned." "I turned it down," I continued. "I'm going to Google instead." The disappointment returned to his face, sharper than before. "Of course you did. You know, Sarah, there comes a point where we have to stop enabling this phase you're going through." "Phase?" I asked. "This whole technology obsession," Mom said, her voice taking on that patient tone she used when explaining things to children. "It's not a real career, sweetheart. It's not stable. Look at Emma. She'll have a corner office on Wall Street by 30. That's success. That's something we can be proud of." I felt something inside me crack. 4 years of their disappointment, 4 years of being compared to Emma, 4 years of having my passion dismissed as a phase. It all crystallized in that moment. "You know what, Dad?" I said, my voice surprisingly calm. "You're right. I think it's time we all acknowledge the truth here." He nodded approvingly, thinking I was about to agree with him. "You're not family anymore," he said, his voice carrying that authoritative tone he used in boardrooms. "Don't embarrass us by walking around claiming to be a Morrison. You've made your choice to throw away everything we've given you." Mom nodded, her attention already shifting back to Emma as she adjusted my sister's honor cord, the golden rope that marked her academic achievements. Emma looked uncomfortable but didn't say anything to defend me. I stood there for a moment, letting the words sink in. Not family anymore. Because I chose innovation over tradition. Because I chose to build something instead of manipulating existing systems for profit. Okay, I said simply. I understand. They looked surprised by my calm acceptance. Dad probably expected an argument, tears, maybe begging for forgiveness. Instead, I just smiled peacefully. If you'll excuse me, I said, I think they're about to announce the scholarship awards. I walked away from them feeling oddly liberated. For 4 years I'd carried the weight of their disappointment, always hoping that someday they'd understand, that someday they'd be proud. Now that hope was gone, and with it, a burden I hadn't realized was crushing me. The scholarship ceremony was held in the main auditorium, with graduates and families filtering in to hear about the various awards and recognitions. I took a seat near the back, alone. I could see my family several rows ahead. Dad checking his phone, Mom whispering something to Emma, all of them clearly wanting to leave. Dean Rodriguez took the stage, his voice carrying easily through the microphone. Today we're not just celebrating graduation. We're celebrating the innovations and achievements that will shape our future. He began with smaller awards, excellence in various subjects, community service recognitions, research achievements. Each winner walked across the stage to polite applause. Now, Dean Rodriguez continued, his voice taking on a more serious tone, we come to our most prestigious award. The Morrison Family Tech Innovation Scholarship. I froze. The Morrison Family Tech Innovation Scholarship? I looked toward my parents, but they seemed as confused as I was. This $2 million scholarship, the dean continued, was established anonymously 3 years ago to support students who demonstrate exceptional innovation in technology with real-world applications. The donor specifically requested that the recipient show not just technical skill, but the ability to use technology to solve meaningful problems. $2 million. I watched my father's expression change from confusion to interest. Mom was leaning forward now, suddenly paying attention. This year's recipient, Dean Rodriguez said, pausing for dramatic effect, has not only excelled academically but has already filed 3 patents for AI-driven educational tools that are being implemented in underprivileged schools across California. My heart started racing. 3 patents. That was me. I was the only student in my class with 3 patents, all for the adaptive learning platform I'd been building. This student has also founded a startup that has already received $15 million in series of funding from major venture capital firms. My mouth went dry. How did they know about the funding? I'd kept that information private, shared only with the university's startup incubator program. Ladies and gentlemen, Dean Rodriguez announced, his voice rising with excitement, the Morrison Family Tech Innovation Scholarship goes to... I could see my father turning in his seat, probably trying to spot which student would be walking across the stage. Mom was whispering something to Emma, both of them looking curious about who would receive such a prestigious award. Sarah Morrison. The auditorium erupted in applause, but all I could hear was the ringing in my ears. I sat frozen for a moment, unable to process what had just happened. The Morrison Family Tech Innovation Scholarship. Had my parents secretly donated money to create a scholarship in our family name? Sarah Morrison, please come to the stage. I stood on shaky legs and began walking down the aisle. As I passed my family's row, I saw Dad's face drain of all color. Mom's mouth was hanging open. Emma was staring at me like she'd never seen me before. When I reached the stage, Dean Rodriguez shook my hand warmly. Congratulations, Sarah. Your work in educational technology is truly groundbreaking. Thank you, I managed to say into the microphone he handed me. But I have to ask, the Morrison family name on the scholarship. Dean Rodriguez smiled. Ah yes, that was the donor's specific request. They said they wanted to honor a family that understood the value of innovation and education. I looked out at the audience and then it hit me. I turned back to the dean. Who was the donor? Well, he said, his voice carrying through the auditorium, since you're the recipient, I think I can share that information. The donor was Morrison Industries Educational Foundation. Morrison Industries. My heart stopped. That was the name of my startup. The company I'd founded and kept secret from my family. The company that had just received $15 million in funding. You see, Dean Rodriguez continued, addressing the audience, Ms. Morrison didn't just win this scholarship, she funded it. 3 years ago, when she was still a sophomore, she approached the university with a proposal. She wanted to create a scholarship for students like herself, those whose families might not understand the value of technological innovation. The pieces fell into place. 3 years ago, when my parents had been particularly vocal about their disappointment in my career choice, I'd taken some of the early profits from my app development work and established the foundation. I'd wanted to help other students whose families didn't support their tech ambitions. I'd never imagined I'd be the recipient of my own scholarship. "Ms. Morrison," the dean said, turning back to me, "would you like to say a few words?" I took the microphone with trembling hands and looked out at the audience. My eyes found my parents immediately. Dad looked like he'd seen a ghost. Mom was clutching Emma's arms so tightly that my sister was wincing. 3 years ago, I began, my voice steadier than I felt. I sat in a dorm room listening to my parents tell me that computer science wasn't a real career, that I was wasting my potential, that I was embarrassing our family. The auditorium was completely silent. I established this scholarship because I knew there were other students out there whose families didn't understand what we were trying to build. Students who were told they were playing with toys instead of pursuing real careers. I could see people in the audience nodding, recognizing the experience. Technology isn't just about making money, I continued. It's about solving problems. The apps I've built help children in underserved communities access personalized education. The AI systems I've developed help teachers identify students who are struggling before they fall behind. The patents I've filed aren't just intellectual property, they're tools that can help level the playing field for millions of kids. I paused, looking directly at my parents. A few minutes ago, my father told me I wasn't family anymore because I chose innovation over tradition. He said I was embarrassing the Morrison name. Dad was shaking his head slightly, probably hoping I wouldn't air our family drama in public. "But here's the thing," I said, my voice growing stronger. "The Morrison name isn't on this scholarship because of our family's legacy. It's here because I put it there. Because I wanted to honor what the Morrison name could represent: innovation, education, and using success to lift others up." The applause started slowly, then built to a thunderous roar. Students were standing, faculty were clapping, and I could see several people wiping their eyes. As I walked off the stage, clutching the $2 million scholarship check that was technically a payment from my own company to myself, I felt lighter than I had in years. The weight of seeking my parents' approval was finally gone. I didn't go back to sit with my family. Instead, I walked out of the auditorium and into the bright California sunshine. My phone was already buzzing with congratulations from professors, classmates, and mentors who had believed in me when my own family couldn't. 5 minutes later, my phone rang. "Dad." "Sarah." His voice was strained, barely controlled. "We need to talk." "Do we?" I asked calmly. How did you, the scholarship, $2 million? "Actually, Dad, it's $2 million every year for the next 10 years. I wanted to make sure it could help a lot of students." Silence on the other end. "Your startup," he finally said. $15 million in funding? Series A, I confirmed. "We're projecting Series B next year at a much higher valuation. The AI platform is being adopted by school districts across the country." More silence. "Sarah, I think there's been a misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding, Dad. You made it very clear. I'm not family anymore because I chose to embarrass the Morrison name with my computer games." "I didn't mean." "You meant exactly what you said. And you know what? You were right. I'm not the same kind of Morrison you and Mom are. I'm the kind who builds things instead of just managing other people's money. I'm the kind who uses success to help others instead of just accumulating status symbols." I could hear him breathing heavily on the other end. "The Google job?" he asked weakly. "Starts Monday. Senior software engineer position. They recruited me specifically because of the educational AI work." "When, Dad?" "They also offered me a signing bonus that's more than most lawyers make in 5 years." I hung up before he could respond. An hour later, as I was packing up my dorm room, Emma knocked on my door. She looked shaken, uncertain. "Can I come in?" she asked. I nodded, continuing to fold my clothes. "I had no idea," she said quietly. "About the company, the patents, any of it." "I know. Why didn't you tell us?" I stopped packing and looked at her. During one of the conversations where Mom and Dad explained how I was wasting my life. During one of the family dinners where you all discussed my future like I wasn't in the room. Emma sat down on my desk chair. There They're pretty shaken up. I imagine they are. Dad's been calling everyone he knows trying to understand what just happened. He had no idea startup funding worked the way it does. Mom's Googling your patents. I smiled grimly. Learning about technology now that there's money involved? Sarah, I'm sorry. We all are. I should have defended you, should have. Emma, I interrupted gently. I don't need an apology. I needed support 4 years ago. I needed a family who believed in me 4 years ago. What I need now is space to build the life I want without constantly justifying my choices to people who think success only looks one way. My phone buzzed with a text. Then another. Then a flood of them. Emma glanced at my phone. Your parents. I looked at the messages. Dad, we need to discuss your future immediately. Mom, family dinner Sunday. We have things to talk about. Dad, I've been thinking about investment opportunities. Mom, your sister mentioned you might need business advice. I showed Emma the messages. She winced. They want to be involved now, she said. Now that there's money, they want to help manage my career. Now that there's prestige, they want to claim credit for supporting me. I finished packing and zipped up my suitcase. Where will you go? Emma asked. I have an apartment in Palo Alto near Google. I've been planning this move for months. Will you answer their calls? I thought about it for a moment. Maybe someday. When they're ready to know me as I actually am, not as a reflection of their expectations or a source of money to manage. Emma nodded slowly. For what it's worth, I'm proud of you. I always was, even when I didn't show it. Thanks, Em. That means something. As I walked out of my dorm room for the last time, my phone rang again. This time it was Dean Rodriguez. Sarah, I hope you don't mind the call. I wanted to personally thank you again. Of course, Dean Rodriguez. I also wanted to let you know, we've had 17 students approach us in the last hour asking about applying for next year's Morrison Family Tech Innovation Scholarship. Your speech inspired them. I smiled, feeling warmth spread through my chest. That's exactly what I hoped for. There's something else. Stanford's Board of Trustees would like to discuss expanding the program. They're wondering if you might be interested in creating additional scholarships, perhaps a full fellowship program. I'd be very interested in that conversation. Excellent. Also, I should mention, there are 3 venture capital firms that have reached out asking for your contact information. Apparently, word about Morrison Industries is spreading quickly. I laughed. It's going to be an interesting week. As I drove away from Stanford heading toward my new life in Palo Alto, I thought about the path that had led me here. 4 years of being told I wasn't good enough, smart enough, or ambitious enough in the right ways. 4 years of being compared to Emma and found wanting. 4 years of having my passion dismissed as a phase. But those 4 years had also taught me something valuable. The only approval I needed was my own. The only validation that mattered was the impact I could make on the world. My phone buzzed with another call from Dad. I let it go to voicemail. 2 hours later, settled in my new apartment, I finally listened to the message. Sarah, it's your father. I think I owe you an apology. Several apologies, actually. I've spent the afternoon researching your company and I'm impressed. More than impressed. I had no idea what you were building. I'd like to take you to dinner this week. If you're willing. I think I have a lot to learn about who you really are. I saved the message but didn't call back. Not yet. Instead, I opened my laptop and began coding. I had a new feature to build for the educational platform, one that would help even more kids access quality learning tools. Real work. Work that mattered. Outside my window, the lights of Silicon Valley twinkled like stars. Somewhere out there were other students like me, other innovators whose families didn't understand their dreams yet. Students who might apply for the Morrison Family Tech Innovation Scholarship next year. Students who would know that success wasn't about meeting other people's expectations. It was about building something meaningful and using that success to lift others up. I coded until midnight, building the future one line at a time.